In Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3, David expressed his complete trust in God to deliver him from the wickedness that he was experiencing. He said, "I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my steps. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear and will trust in the Lord." Just as David expressed in this psalm, there continues to be deliverance from horrible pits for those who put their complete trust in the Lord today. First, recognize you will experience some horrible pits. There are many different kinds of horrible pits people experience during their lives on this earth. Some are in horrible pits due to deaths that have occurred in their families. Some are because of injuries and illnesses they have experienced. Some are because of how others have harmed them in the past. Some are in horrible pits because of their decisions to stand for the way of righteousness and have experienced persecution. Regardless, as we live in a world that's full of suffering and death, you are sure to find yourself in a horrible pit at some time in your life. Of course, the worst horrible pit anyone ever experiences is the pit of sin. This is a pit that we cause ourselves to fall into because we choose to fulfill our temporary desires rather than the desires of God. And this is a pit that leads us to eternal punishment in hellfire, Romans 6, verse 23. But second, know that there's always deliverance for those who make the Lord their trust. Many people stay stuck in these horrible pits because they cannot possibly climb out of them by themselves. However, David's confidence was not in himself. His confidence was in God. He recognized that it was only God who could rescue people out of horrible pits. He said in Psalm 40 in verse 4, "Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust." Sometimes God will rescue us from the suffering that we experience on this earth. Sometimes we can cry out to the Lord for deliverance, and he will answer our prayers according to our petitions. James 5, verse 16, for instance, says, "The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much." However, God has never promised that even those who trust in him will be saved from all suffering on this earth. For instance, both Jesus and Paul pleaded with God concerning their horrible pits. You can read, for instance, in Luke 22, verses 39 to 53, and 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 10. Yet, neither were delivered from them, physically speaking. Instead, God's greatest assurance to those who put their complete trust in him and obey his will is the ability to rescue the faithful out of the horrible pits through the eternal salvation he has made available in Christ Jesus, especially from the most horrible pit of sin. No matter what horrible pit you have fallen into, the answer is found in Jesus. He can help you. He can save you. Romans 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." For those who trust and follow God, there is eternal salvation reserved in heaven. He will lift you out of the miry clay and establish you on solid ground. Everything will work out for your spiritual good when you are entirely devoted to God. When your life on this earth ends and you live eternally with God in heaven, the most horrible pits you experience during your lifetime will seem as if they were nothing. Do not waver, then, in your trust in God when you are sitting at the bottoms of these pits. Instead, call upon the Lord for deliverance and place your full trust in him. The only way you will be defeated by these horrible pits is if you fail to trust in God.